about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, so today I want to talk about the disappearance of Cherrie Mahan. And she was an 8-year-old girl that disappeared February 22nd, 1985. Now, this case was brought to my attention by a bunch of people, and I would attribute that mostly to I'm close to the area, about 3 hours away from this tragic abduction. So, what I want to do here is bring attention to the case. And it's not going to be as much as a thorough, um, deep dive investigation, but it will be a thorough assessment based on the knowledge that I have and some of the research that I did. So, the number one goal of this is to get this out there because I think there's some people that know what happened to Cherrie. And I took a trip this week to talk to Cherrie's mom and a couple of her friends who are helping in this investigation. They created a Facebook page, and that's got forwarded to me, and then I got in contact with the person from that page. Her name is Bailey, and her two friends that are helping her keep the word out there for so people don't forget about Cherrie and the abduction, and to help Cherrie's mom Janice um, with everything. There's a lot that goes into a missing persons case, not only from the investigative standpoint, but as a family. And so I wanted to, number one, I wanted to meet them, get some information, but I guess more importantly for me as an investigator doing an assessment is what you guys know if you read my book, listen to my past videos, I want to go to the location. And again, what does the location tell you? It could tell you a lot of things or it could tell you nothing, but you won't know that unless you're there. I wanted to stand in the footprints and walk the steps that Cherrie walked, see what she saw. But it's more than that. It is about seeing the landscape, seeing the driveways, seeing a bus route. All these things are very important. And yes, I think you can get that from technology nowadays through Google Maps and services like that. But there's no substitute for being there. Just like a rock concert. You can watch it on YouTube all you want, but unless you were front row at a Guns N' Roses concert, you're not going to get the same feeling. So, with that being said, I made the 3-hour trek and met with Bailey and her two friends and Janice, Cherrie's mom. Number one, I can't speak highly enough of these individuals. And there's countless individuals like that out in social media that do things the right way. And this is a prime example of some people that are doing it the right way. Forwarding everything they get to the police, documenting everything, and being naturally curious. Because, as Joe Kenda told me one time, that is what makes a great detective, and I couldn't agree more. So, let me fill you in on the background of Cherrie's disappearance, on February 22nd, 1985, which was a Friday, which does play into my assessment a little bit. Cherrie was basically your normal 8-year-old. You hear that all the time, but what makes them abnormal? What are they going to be doing? Running away from home at age 8 or no, she was normal. She was a good kid. Went to school, chatterbox. She lived with her mom, Janice, and her stepdad. And she was, from what I understand, a product of a failed relationship. The father, there's not a lot out there publicly about him, and there doesn't need to be. He was not really a part of Cherrie's life, and from my assessment, what I see has nothing to do with this. So there's no reason to look at him any further. There's no reason for me to mention him any further on this channel. So I will not. She lived with Janice and her stepdad, who was a Vietnam vet who suffered from PTSD. I know a lot about that. Most recently, within the last 2 years, dealing with that with my father, who was a Vietnam veteran, and I certainly know the effects of that. On February 22nd, 1985, Cherrie had gone to school. She rode the bus back home. On that bus was around 20, maybe 30 kids. She got left off at her bus stop, but she was not alone. 3 other children got off with her. Now, one of the main reasons, again, I wanted to go and I wanted to look at this area because, according to newspaper accounts, Cherrie got dropped off about 50 yards from her house. Some say 75 yards. So, well, hey, let's go there and look so there is no more question. So, I took a little video, which you'll see here. Now, what you're seeing is I'm panning. This is the other side of the road. Nothing really to see there. I'm panning over to where Cherrie's driveway is, where she was walking to, and to where she was dropped off, and then the road that would continue on where the bus would take. Cherrie never made it past her driveway. So she got left off here where these mailboxes are. There was a house there at the time. And she started towards her house, towards that driveway. And then once she got into that driveway, she had to walk a little bit to get to her home. Again, she never made it. Now, one of the things that was a big deal, which it should have been at the time, was when they interviewed the children on the bus, several of them said there was a blue or greenish van that was following the bus. Now, does that make it suspicious right away? No, but one of the good things about going to the area is you get to see how rural it is. And it is. So, but while I was standing there, there was some traffic on that road. Now, that traffic was going to be a lot less 40 years ago, but traffic nonetheless. This van that was behind the bus was unique. It had a mural painted on the side of it, as you can see here. This is the description of a van that the children gave. Very distinguishable. It should have been picked out if that person was from the area. The van was never identified. Now, there was an adult present at that school drop off. Remember when I said Cherrie got off with 3 other kids? The mom, and I believe her name was Deborah, was waiting there for her kids. And she observed that blue van as well. The way she describes it is if she's not sitting in a driveway waiting for the kids to get in. You know how you park, especially if you lived up a hill and you have to drive down to the driveway and you wait there for the bus. I do it every single day for my daughter. But it didn't sound like that because she's quoted as saying, I saw the van in my rear view mirror. To me, and I'd love clarification on this that I couldn't get, but it sounded like maybe it was the bus, then her car, then the van. Because she said, I couldn't really see it too much because my rear window was dirty, but I did catch a glimpse of it in my rear view mirror. If she's parked in a driveway waiting to pick up those kids and take them to the house, I don't think she would see that van in her rear view mirror, but it's possible, I guess. I'd like clarification on that. But regardless, it wasn't just kids that saw this van. It was an adult. So when Cherrie did not show up, her mom and her stepdad were at the house, which I think is it is a big thing, because normally when missing kids, they go missing like that, there's a delay, or the parents are at home and there's always a delay. There was no delay here. She got off that bus around 4:10. According to the parents, you could hear the bus. So they heard it arrive, and they knew Cherrie would be there within five minutes. She didn't show up. They waited not long, another 5 minutes. Hey, she ain't there. We're going to go down and look. Now just imagine if they weren't there, how far behind the 8 ball they would be. In this case, it didn't matter, unfortunately, but they went and looked. She wasn't there. They end up calling the police. Now that's a tragic, but it's a learning lesson. And remember, for me, all these cases that I do, it's all about learning. What can we learn just from that? Her getting off the bus at 4:10, and by 4:20, she's looking. The people are actively looking for her, and by 5 o'clock, the police are there, are notified, and are on their way. There was no delay, and still, she was never found. There's no trace of her. So we can learn from that, and we can learn that tragedy can happen in a blink of an eye. In a blink of an eye. I go back to these Idaho murders, and I challenged people who say, well, there's no way that Brian Koberger or anybody could kill anybody within, 17 minutes. Are you kidding me? You kill him in 30 seconds. 4 people, 30 seconds. So tragedy can happen in a split instant, and it did in this case. So the police are there, and they start searching right away. They have the bloodhounds there. Now, there's some discrepancies, as always, in a 40-year-old case. Newspaper articles. Remember, when you go off newspaper articles, you want to go as close to the crime as possible, and that's what I did. You rely on those because you don't have the police reports. But as you can see here, this is from the Pennsylvania State Police, addressed to Kenneth L. Maines in reference to a right to know. We filled out a right to know act on this case so I could get those documents. And they did respond within the allotted time, but they said they needed more time, of course. So I will be excited when and if I get that document, or more than one document. The initial police report is what I'm looking for. That's what I always look for. Because normally a suspect is within the first 50 pages. Not always, but often. So in this case, Cherrie goes missing, and people with bloodhounds are looking right away. Now, there was a individual, a former police officer, who was a part of that search, and they stated that they got a scent from Cherrie that went past her house to an abandoned house, and then they lost it there. I did not come up with that anywhere in my research, but that is knowledge from that individual officer, who obviously is probably in his 70s, I'm guessing, or maybe 80s. I'm not sure. So I'd be curious also to know about that. Remember, it's February. She has earmuffs on. It's a little colder. She had plans to go to a friend's house that weekend. She certainly is not going to an abandoned house on her own accord, if that did happen. Now, I am not doubting that police officer's account of that or his bloodhound's abilities. I will just say that there are some other things that I'm going to relay to you that make me doubt that. I won't put it out completely, because it certainly is possible. But I think her remains would have been found up there, because I do believe that Cherrie is deceased. And I do believe that the most likely motive for this is sexual, just like most of them are. But I think, and again, I want to stress that I'm not an expert on this case. I have researched it. I have talked to the mom. I've gone to the location. I've looked at some things, and it's like it's a puzzle, right? And you just have to fit the pieces together, but you got to do that through possibilities and probabilities. Okay? Is it possible that Cherrie went on her own to this abandoned house or something else? Sure, it's possible. Is it probable? Absolutely not. I think, and this is just on the surface here, if I got different intel, different information, maybe my thought would change on this. I think that the van is a red herring. And what I mean by that is I don't think that it's involved. Now, initially, I did believe it was involved in this. But there was an observation by several other children on that bus about something that I see. And I don't see that has gotten the attention that I feel it deserves. And that is that a few of the children said including the children that got off of the bus, I believe one of those children at least said, yes, we saw the van, but we saw another vehicle that was parked in a driveway at the bus stop. So if you remember, there are 3 driveways at this bus stop location. You have 2 where the bus actually stopped, and then you have Cherrie's, which is 50 feet away. I would love to know where the children saw this blue car. It doesn't matter, as long as they saw it there. I don't understand why the focus from police wasn't on that car. The only thing that I could think of is that they identified it and said, okay, we're rolling it out because it belongs to Mrs. Smith, who lives right there. And she was on her way to get groceries and she had to wait for the bus to pass, or something to that effect. But there are several newspaper articles that mention this small, compact blue car. Again, it's a rural area. There shouldn't be a lot of traffic in 1985 there. But you have a blue van right behind either the bus, or if Deborah's car is right behind the bus, then the blue van is behind Deborah's car, if that makes sense. And then you have this other car. Well, you only have two parties getting off of the bus there. You have the three children who are all going with Deborah. You have Cherrie. So what is that compact blue car doing there? Again, possible it's so-and-so's and they were just waiting, but I've never seen anything about that. I'm very curious about that. And I'm beyond curious. I think that more than likely that is the offender and not the blue van. Now, I can envision maybe a scenario of some sort, but it's a hard pill for me to swallow that two vehicles were involved in this. If that was the case, it would be a much more organized and higher level abduction, meaning it was done for sex trafficking purposes. But I don't believe that, okay? Let me tell you what I believe. Number one, 8-year-old Cherrie Mahan knew her abductor. Now, how can you say that? Well, this is how I can say it. You have 20 to 30 kids on that bus. You had children that were left off of that bus already before it got to Cherrie's. And at least one, according to Cherrie's mom, was a female, younger. Why would the offender, if he's following a bus on its bus route, let's say it is this van, why would that offender not pick off the female that was let off before Cherrie? She's by herself. Okay? Instead, they're going to wait until Cherrie's bus stop, where there's at least two vehicles and three other individuals, kids, and an adult, plus Cherrie. See what I mean? Too many people. Why would you risk abducting somebody with that many witnesses when you could have just done it up there? Now, maybe he didn't do it up there because what? That's not who he wanted. He wanted Cherrie. So I believe she was targeted. Number two, I think it's somebody she knows, because I don't believe there would be any force needed. If an individual was, say, in this blue compact car in Cherrie's driveway, it would be much easier for them to get out of the car. Wait, the bus, here's the driveway. The bus is passing this way, and it stops right about here. The three kids get out, they get in mom's car, continue on. Cherrie's all by herself now. She walks to that driveway. The individual gets out of that car and says, "Hey, Cherrie." "Oh, hi, John," whatever, whatever his name would be. "Yeah, your mom is at my house. Her car broke down. You need to come with me." "Okay, no problem." She wouldn't question it. I think that is more probable than any other scenario, especially somebody in a van following the bus. Is it possible that one individual in that van is following the bus, Cherrie gets out, he puts it in park in the middle of the road or pulls off the side of the road, runs around, grabs Cherrie, abducts her, throws her in, and then what? He has to continue on, which is what? He would be following that bus with a screaming, kicking child that he just abducted? That makes no sense, right? because you can't pass. I mean, if you see the road, and that's why it's so important to go there. It's not like the van could go past and continue on. It has to follow that bus route now. Could it make a 3-point turn and go back the other way? Sure, it could. Again, possibilities versus probabilities. It's very possible, but I don't find that probable. I think it's more probable that the blue car that was parked in whatever driveway it was, I'm just saying it's parked in Cherrie's driveway because it is more hidden there. But it could very well be parked at the exact location where the kids were dropped off, where Cherrie was dropped off. Could be. And again, I think if it was parked there, I think more people would have saw it on the bus. But with only a couple kids seeing it, you know how kids are on the bus. Some are yapping, playing games. You got a couple that are just staring out the window. There you go. Those couple that were just staring out the window as the bus drove by probably seen that car parked there. Now again, that's just an educated guess by me. The police reports know, and that's why this right to know is very important. If the car was parked at the bus stop and somebody physically abducted her there, how stupid would that person have to be as a criminal? Think about it. You're going to park, it's premeditated. You're parked there to abduct this girl for sexual purposes. You're going to park at the exact bus stop where 30 kids can see your car. The bus driver can see your car. The mom, Deborah, who's having 3 kids picked up there, they all can see your car. But they don't. That's why it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that the car was most likely parked down the road in Cherrie's driveway. So what does that tell you? A, she was either being stalked, which I don't believe. 2, the person knows her and knows where she lives. So because of all of that, you see how you deduce? That tells me Cherrie knew her abductor. And if Cherrie knew her abductor, her mom and stepdad knew the abductor too. Does that make sense? It was somebody that they know. Now, what's important there is this is how you can always disregard an expert. When you see these idiots on TV, on CNN or wherever they are, and I don't watch TV, at least the news, so I don't see them anymore, but I used to. And they would say, former FBI agent says girl was kidnapped by somebody she knew. And then they interview him, and he's like, yeah, she had to know her abductor. I believe that because Cherrie would have fought. And okay, really? That's your reasoning to go on national TV and say something? No, you have to back it up. You back it up by inferred logic and deductions. So, right off the bat, I can say she knew who it was. And it was such a rural area, that plays part in it as well. Now, speaking to Janice, Cherrie's mom, who's a lovely, lovely lady, by the way. When I meet people like that, it is so heartbreaking to me to know what they go through. Now, as a lot of you know, and I don't talk about it a lot, but I lost a son as well. Not through, a missing person or murder, but nonetheless, and he was 21. Now, I know that feeling, but I don't know that feeling. You know what I mean? An 8-year-old child who is missing. So you still cling on the hope. Although in the back of her mind, she knows, more than likely, her daughter's dead. But you still have that hope. And hope is not always a beautiful thing. You want to have closure. You want to have resolution. And when you lose a child, it is very, very difficult. And to lose it as a missing person lose them as a missing person, it's even more difficult, I believe. So I felt really bad for her, and she doesn't want that, you know. She's that type of person, you know. She's not looking for sympathy. All right. She, I can see, is built like me. If I know that if you want sympathy, you look between shit and syphilis in the dictionary. I realize that. Now I don't seek sympathy, and that's why I don't talk about my son. I don't need it. Okay? What she wants is answers. She wants results. Because it's been 40 freaking years. And there are people in that small community that know. Now, after I spoke to Janice, she had told me that, because I want to know about behaviors. Changing of behaviors in victims or offenders, suspects, is very important. For example, let's say there was a suspect in this case. For whatever reason, there's no evidence, but let's say he drove a blue car. And it was a neighbor, let's say. Police interview him because he has a blue car. Or let's say he had the blue van. Or something similar, not exactly the same. He says, yeah, I have a similar van, but I was home. My wife will verify it. Whatever it is. I was at work. So they cross him off the list. But that next week, all of a sudden, he starts drinking. And he used to drink, but let's say he starts drinking more. Now he's drinking the blackout phase. Or let's say he's never got in trouble before. Never been arrested, no nothing. And all of a sudden he's arrested for a shoplifting charge. When you have that type of behavior change, there's a reason for it. Now, that is for suspects, offenders. But you also want to look at victimology. Okay, Cherrie's a normal 8-year-old person. Is there anything that we can take, and I'm not talking about, she told her teacher that she was scared to go home. I'm not talking about that. Yes, that is all important. You have to interview those people. But I'm talking about behavioral changes. Such as, well, she started to urinate the bed at night. Ooh. That's interesting. She started to lock the door at night in her bedroom, and she never did that before. Ooh. Okay. Now, why? Because that tells you that something's going on within that child's life, and maybe not at home, that needs resolution. We do it well now with therapy. But there's a reasoning that something's going on. Now, what is it? She's 8, so it's not puberty. It's not like she's transitioning to a teenager. When I talked to Cherrie's mom, she said she did not like, she felt people were looking in her window. She was scared. She wanted to just like move her bed away from the window area, be in a room that didn't have windows, things like that. Now, you can chalk that up to a scared child. Like I was when I watched The Exorcist. How I still am when I watch The Exorcist. Scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. But I digress. The point being is you could chalk it up to that. But I was never abducted. When a child has something like this happen, they're abducted, and you couple that with some sort of behavioral change. Now, she had just moved there approximately 6 to 8 months previous. If she acted like that when they first got there, I would say, okay, it's a transition. She has left an area and she's come into the country, and she's kind of scared. But they had been there for a little bit, and this behavioral cue, to me, just it started within that 6 to 8 months. It leads me to believe, and I'm not saying this for sure, but because of that, it makes me believe that maybe she had been molested or sexually assaulted in some sort of fashion. It may be not even physical. It was the appearance of something that made her feel uncomfortable. Now, obviously, I believe that whatever that was, she did not share with her mom, or her mom would have either told me, she would have definitely told the police back then. So it leads further credence to my belief that she knew her abductor. And I believe it was the same person who made her feel scared, made her feel that somebody was looking in her window. I would believe that the offender, whoever it is, lives within 10 to 15 miles from her house, was familiar with her routine, was very familiar with her mom and stepdad and their lifestyle. That is, it is a very brazen crime to abduct a child in broad daylight at a bus stop with witnesses. That's what it also makes me believe that maybe sexual assault wasn't the only motivation. It was maybe to make sure that she didn't tell anybody about the previous assault. That's what I see from looking at things, from a behavioral aspect of it. The parents certainly had nothing to do with it. Anybody who sits out there, especially today, and says, oh, her mom's guilty, is a freaking idiot. And that's the problem with social media and the internet in general, because you have an opinion that you can spout off about when you have no knowledge. And all you do is hurt people and the case because of your ignorance. So I want to be clear that the family had nothing to do with this. How do I know that? I know that, number one, because I met the mom. But that's not it. The timeline. Getting off the bus at 4:20, she never makes it up there. Could she have made it up there if something happened? No. It's possible, but it is not probable. Okay? They passed a lie detector to test, but listen, lie detector to test, I don't care about the results of those. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is me to eye to eye talk to somebody and no. Just the same case with Stephanie Coyle. If you don't know that case, look it up. Watch my video on it. When state trooper sat down with her son and pretty much accused him of murdering his mom. Now, I've worked by his side for his mom, with him for a long time now. He didn't murder his mom. You know, when people don't have the knowledge to do this type of work, they shouldn't run their mouths. And they sure as shit shouldn't be in law enforcement. They need better training. Okay? Let me give you, and I'm not going to digress too much off of Cherrie, but let me just give you this 2-minute little example of that Stephanie Coyle case. When the state trooper said, when I brought up getting DNA from Dan Coyle, the son, I observed his carotid artery start pumping. He began to sweat. It's my belief that he probably reached in and got his DNA off of, scraped against the screen. And because we asked him, he's having these responses. And that was written in a police report that I read. Now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with it is you gave an opinion. When a police report is supposed to be facts, you should have left it at, hey, I asked for a DNA sample with two other cops next to me, which neither of them observed this. And I've noticed Dan Coyle's carotid artery pop, and he began to perspire. That's it. That's all you know. Police report isn't about your opinion that now you think he's a guilty party because of that. Why didn't these other two write it down? I digress. I apologize. Just irritates me when I think about things like that, when people point the finger at specific people with no evidence of murder. You just ruin their lives, and you're making them hurt all over again. Dan Coyle hurts because he didn't do that to his mom, but yet people point a finger at him, especially a law enforcement officer. And then, as Janice told me, somebody commented recently on a Facebook post or something that she was guilty. It just frustrates me to no end. So, I'm still a little bit intrigued about this bloodhound business with them tracking her scent up there, because I could see her getting not abducted as in forcefully. Again, it's somebody she knew. But is it possible that somebody that she knew took her and led her up to that abandoned house? Yes, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's probable. I think a vehicle is more than likely what took place. You're talking February 22nd. February is the coldest month of the year in Pennsylvania. She had earmuffs on. She was excited to get home because she was going to her friend's house. So if somebody was on foot that she knew and said, hey, just take a hike in the woods, I mean, she's going to find that a little suspicious, I think. That's why I'm not so sure about that report. But, I'm certainly not calling the former police officer, a liar or anything like that. And it's possible his bloodhounds did lead him up there. I didn't see anything of that. And I've dealt with bloodhounds before in that Stephanie Coyle case. They used them then as well, but they didn't produce anything. So that's my thought on Cherrie Mahan, that she was abducted for sexual purposes, but she was abducted by somebody she knew. She probably got into a car willingly, not forcefully. One person, one abductor. And now, where is she at? Where's her remains? Well, I don't know, and nobody knows other than the offender. Because let me tell you something that really pisses me off when I researched this case today is psychics. Now, all of you that believe in psychics, that's great. I am not here to change your belief system in anything, but there was a psychic that was brought in within 3 days from Ohio. And he says, oh, your child is going to be found safe. Really? How'd that work out? It's 40 years later. You know what I mean? Don't believe in psychics. They're not true. That's my public service announcement. All they do is piss me off. Sylvia Brown, joke. Because, why do I say that? Because she was involved in one of the cases that I worked in, where she gave false hope. And she's been proven to be a liar. And I write about that, I know I do, in my new book. Where is it? Right there. Cold Case Investigations, Mastering It. don't believe in psychics. They don't know. And it's funny, as in this case, I was talking to Janice about psychics. Well, they said Cherrie was buried in this apple orchard, but somebody else says that she's alive. Another one says she's in that pond. I guess the psychics need to hold a conference so they all can get on the same page and get their lies straight, so they can, give false hope some more. And don't get on me about I'm not that Grayson into psychics. Parents of missing children, I understand why you use psychics. You want all hope. I get it. I'm not blaming you at all. I'm just saying they're fake. I digressed so much on that I forgot where I was going. Well, I think I was talking about the bloodhounds. Oh, the remains. Where do I think Cherrie's remains are? It's very rural area, wooded, mines. I find it difficult to believe that she was abducted by somebody she knows, and then if that person lived with anybody, that they were taken back to a house. I think more than likely, I would say it's more probable than not that she would be located in the surrounding woods somewhere. Now, I know they did a search party, and I understand that, but things can be missed. You are not going to, just like you are not going to abduct Cherrie in front of 20 or 30 people. Although, yes, technically it did happen. But the bus was moving, kids were getting in the other car, and then Cherrie was separated and alone. Then the abduction occurred. It wasn't like the person sitting right at the bus stop with his arms crossed like this, waiting for her to get off the bus, grabs her, she's kicking and screaming, he throws her in a car, and everybody's at the window looking like this. No, that didn't happen. Just like that didn't happen, I find it hard to believe that this person would take Cherrie to a location where there's other people that can witness her death or sexual molestation, whichever occurred, or probably more than likely both occurred. To me, it's one person. That person's probably between the ages of 18 and 30. The reason I say that is because that's what statistics tell us. It was somebody who obviously was not at work that day. This is a Friday. It's a weekend. I would not be surprised if this person was a drinker and he got some confidence in him because he was drinking to go do this. And I don't think it was on the whim, hey, let's just go do it. Something that he was thinking about for a while, for whatever reason. Again, I would look at a neighbor, a family friend. That's who I would be looking at in this case. Now, the problem with these high-profile cases, and I've dealt with a ton of them, is you have so many rumors and so many people that are giving you tips because this is what they heard and this is what they heard. And it's very hard to go through them and separate them. That's why it's always important to get the police reports, because why? Those are the facts, especially the first 15, 20 pages. In there, in the 15 and 20 pages, what are you hearing? Bus stop, 410, dropped off. Bus driver's name, what bus driver saw, what each individual kid saw, what Deb saw, what the color of the car was, what was Cherrie's at. All of those are facts right then and there. Now, if you wait 20 years, now you're going to start hearing things. Well, I heard that Cherrie was crying on the bus. Okay. I heard this guy talking at a bar saying that he destroyed the van because he had killed Cherrie. Those are all hearsay things. That's not facts. Well, that could be a fact, right? We don't know. But what's in the first 15 to 20 pages, that's what's most important, because it's not hearsay. It's right there. They saw things. Or they didn't see things, as it turns out in a lot of these cases. what should be done now? I think these girls that I met, and I'm sorry that I don't remember all their names. I just remember Bailey because she's the one that I've been in contact with the most. But her two friends that help her run these web pages and collect information, they are doing a great job, and they can't be commended enough. They're helping Cherrie's mom with this. And thank goodness, because as human beings, sometimes we get lost in ourselves, meaning we forget how other people hurt and how they need help. And to recognize that and to help Janice, um, that's what it's about. That's what life's about. And that's why I do this, So it was nothing for me to take 3 hours, 6 hours, I guess, 7, 8 hours out of my day to go down there and meet and try to help them in any way that I can. And one of the ways that I can help them, not only through my assessment, is to get this out there for people to watch, to say, you know what? I know who owns that van. I know who owns that blue car. I knew somebody who was 18 to 30 years old that lived within 15 miles of that location and has a previous history of sexual assault and battery on young girls and boys, maybe. I know somebody whose behavioral patterns changed that week that Cherrie went missing. I know somebody who took off work that next day when Cherrie went missing that lived within 10 and 15 miles and was between 18 and 30 years old. That's what you need. Okay. I'm not a miracle worker, and I can't tell you where Cherrie's body is. I wish I could. I did obtain a ground penetrating radar, not specifically for this case, but it was the jumping point, because I had so many people ask me, could I help them find a clandestine grave, and they were one of the last people to ask me, and I finally was like, you know what? Okay, I'll go buy one so I can help. In this case, I wouldn't know where to look, because I think she's probably in a wooded area that is familiar by that offender, who probably, like I said, he got her in the car there by some sort of ruse. Think of Ted Bundy and how he used a ruse. His arm in a sling. Can you help me carry this? It was more, hey, your mom's at my place. She had been to that guy's place before. That's my feeling. And maybe he didn't go to that place and he just drove to an area within that, 10-mile radius that has lots of back roads, a mining town, and molested and killed her right then and there. And then left her body. I doubt he would have buried the body, because, again, it's just it's in a haste. Reminds me a lot of the Jennifer Hill case as well, where Kim Hubbard took the girl down to the cornfield, 12-year-old girl, and ended up strangling her and leaving her body. Didn't bury her, just left her in the cornfield, and that's where she was found. And it was a sexually motivated crime. So, and Jennifer Hill knew Kim Hubbard. It was her best friend's brother. This has a lot of similarities to that. And I love historical comparisons between old cases like that. So that's it. That's the case of Cherrie Mahan. Sad case. Poor girl didn't get to live her life because of the actions of one. But if that person's out there, or if you know who that person is, there's always time for redemption. We must think about our sins in life and think of how we can wash away those sins in order to get to where we want to eventually. So, if the offender is watching this, or if you know the offender and you have a suspicion of who it is, I would challenge you to think about that. Think about the life after this life that we will live and how you want that life to be. And there's still time. And if you have remorse, which I feel that this offender does, there is time for forgiveness. And that is through Cherrie's mom. And I would think it most important to get with her. Say what you know. Ask for forgiveness. And then move on with your life without the burden that you are carrying right now that's been weighing you down for 40 years. I think you can do that. I think you're man enough to do that. And if you don't want to contact Cherrie's mom, I'm not hard to find. You can certainly reach out to me and let me know what you know. But again, I think the van is a red herring. I don't think the van has anything to do with it. I think it's the blue small compact car that was more than likely in Janice's driveway. But if you have any information about this case, if you were one of the kids on the bus, if you were the bus driver, if you were the person, I think it was Deborah, get a hold of me. Okay? I'll listen to you. I know you probably told your story before, but sometimes people miss things. Sometimes things are not always followed up on properly. So I will listen to you if you want to tell me your story. Also, look for, I believe it's might be Cherrie's Angels, Cherrie Mahan's Facebook page that they created. Please go to your little search bar and type that in and follow the page. And they have a tip line, some sort of anonymous tip that you can leave. If you know something and you don't want to reach out to me, go there. And they're doing a wonderful job, and I'll support them in any way I can, just like I will support Cherrie's mom in any fashion that I can. So with that said, hey, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this. And until next time, Maine's out. So I always get the question, how do you become a cold case detective? Ken Maines, how did you become a cold case detective? Well, I had that in mind a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And I got the answer right here. Mastering Cold Case Investigations, a guidebook for detectives. I wrote this 550-page behemoth for that purpose. Because when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then when I became a detective, I wanted to know more about cold cases, why they go cold, why are they unsolved? Is it evidence? Is it lack of determination? Is it perseverance? Is it politics? All the above. Well, I set the answer to all those questions in my new book. It's been 10 years of research, writing, jotting down things. I knew that I was going to write this book eventually. And it finally has come to a head where I'm able to actually get it done, get it published by Unsolved No More Publishing, and get it out to you. So who's this book for? It's for detectives. It's for amateur detectives. It's for college students, academia, forensics. The topics I cover in this book, from what is a cold case, victimology, research, crime scene location, criminal profiling, conflict, greed, sex and revenge, possibilities versus probabilities. That is huge in this book. I go through that a lot because that's the basis and foundation of my methodology. Evidence, sketches. Of course, you have affirmations. Why should you listen? Social media, the rule of psychology, equivocal deaths, modus operandi, signature. Legal and ethical considerations in cold cases, integrity, involving as a cold case detective, serial killers, missing persons, domestic violence, exposing myths, premeditation versus spontaneous, confidential informants, wrongly convicted, clandestine graves, you name it. I cover it in here. 550-page hardcover textbook. And along with all those topics, I also wanted to do case studies, especially case studies on confessions. Why? Because you can learn so much from confessions. At the end of the book, I go in great detail about killers in general who have confessed, why they did it, and what we can learn. That's always the most important thing, what we can learn from them and move forward and apply what we learned on that case to a future case. So I have all that. I tried to incorporate as much as I could, and there's a lot in there about real life cases that I have worked on and I have either solved or learned something from. And I'll tie that to a specific chapter, along with tips, certain things that I think you should look for in certain areas. It's a great book to learn from. But it's not just for active law enforcement members, private investigators, defense attorneys. Everybody can learn from this book. And that is what is motivated me to write this, is I want people to learn. I am tired of seeing wrongfully convicted people. I'm tired of the politics of district attorneys' offices and state police and local jurisdictions who either don't have the resources to do it or they just pass it off because they don't know how, they don't want to, they don't have the desire, the determination. And all that does is affect the victims and the victims' families. And I see it time and time again. You will see endorsements and affirmations from victims' family members in here who I've worked with in the past because they are the most important people. To pass off what I have learned to you so you can be a great investigator, you can be a great detective, and you can solve cases just like I do. So go ahead and go to kenmains.com and pre-order Mastering Cold Cases. I think we're signing, what are we doing? 50? We're signing 50 books for pre-order, getting them out to you before this goes on sale on Amazon and unsolvedpublishing.com on April 7th. So get your copy now. I'll sign it. I'll get it out to you and start learning. That way we can start solving cold cases together. Thanks for watching. Mains out.